I would like to welcome you in the ELT series by ELT Long. Today we are going to discuss about the listening difficulties of students. It means in this topic we will mainly cover the factors that makes listening difficult. It means what are the factors that makes listening activities difficult for the student. So in this video we will mainly discuss why the listening listening classroom is not much fruitful or much useful for a student. As an ESL or EFL teacher, we have to understand the factors that make listening difficult, especially for the ESL learner or EFL learner. So as a teacher, once we understand the affecting factors, we can solve them during the listening class, and we can utilize the proper technique and proper activities or proper method to teach listening activities or to teach listening skill. Let's move to the point. So the factors that affect listening activities is the speed of a speaker. This is the first factor that affects highly the listening activities. How the speed of a speaker affects or makes listening task difficult. The matter is the speed of a speaker's speech, means the speed while the speaker is using, the speed of his words coming from his mouth is not controlled or cannot be controlled by the listener. For example, if I, as a teacher, I speak slowly like this, my student will feel easy to understand. They will feel easy to understand. But if I speak fast, the students cannot grab my all words properly. They may miss or they may understand only few words that I speak. So as the listener do not have control over the speed of a speaker, the speed determines the understanding of the listener. So the speed of a speaker can be regarded as one of the factors that affects listening. And there is deviation in attention. So if a listener pay little attention, or if sometime they lose attention slightly toward the sentences of the speaker, they may get less understanding or no understanding. So if there is a slight deviation in attention to the speaker's word, if the speaker is speaking fast, there will be less understanding or no understanding overall. So the attention also matters. If a listener is paying high attention to the words of a speaker, even the speaker is speaking fast, the understanding can rise high. But if the attention is paid less by the learner or the listener, there will be problem. There will be less understanding or no understanding overall, or might be misunderstanding. So this is a factor that the speed of a speaker sound also affect the listening. Another thing is that the less or no access, especially in the context of ESL or EFL teaching, learners do not have access, or they have low access or less access to authentic material of listening tasks. Even the boards, they develop textbooks, but they pay very less attention to develop listening material. Listening materials. So if there is if listening materials are not developed by the curriculum board, the student cannot get access to authentic listening material, which ultimately leads toward their listening activities or listening skill. If a learner cannot get access to authentic listening material, obviously their listening skill cannot be developed. The second is classroom activities. So the classroom activities, especially the ESL teachers, they more focus on reading, writing, grammar, and sometimes even speaking. But the teacher pay very less attention, pay very less effort to develop listening activities or listening skill of students. Mostly they teach the part of a curriculum that contains high weightage, means that are much important or more important from examination point of view. As most of the curriculum board has divided very less weightage of mark for listening activities. On the name of listening activities, the ESL teacher only speak the target language and the students listen, and teacher also think that they are getting exposure to the target language, but only being exposed with teacher's speech is not enough to develop listening skill. Or such activity can also be regarded as one of the affecting factors that make listening difficult. And there is environment. Though we teach target language using direct method mainly, we use the target language in the classroom, but we couldn't properly create native like environment. We could not create native like environment. Our accent, especially the accent of the teachers who are non-native speaker of English language, their speech cannot create native environment where a learner can get a proper exposure to the target language. So these three components determines that there is less or no access of listening material to the students of English language, which ultimately creates a difficulty to develop listening activities or listening skill of the ESL learner. Another is repetition. Repetition is also a factor that makes listening difficult, in the sense that while reading a text, a learner can repeat the lines many times as he or she wants, but during the listening process they do not have control over the speech, or they do not have control over the speaker, which ultimately leads less understanding of the speech or of the content. So it means that a listener or the ESL student cannot repeat the speech or the content as per their wish, as they can repeat while reading a text or while reading a content. So as the repetition of the speech or vocabs which they feel difficult cannot be repeated as per their wish, each time the speaker will not address their repetition request and explain the difficult vocabulary. So it is not possible even from the side of the speaker, and it ultimately leads to a difficulty in listening. So as the listener do not have ability to repeat as per their will and ability to understand the content being expressed, which ultimately leads to the difficulty of listening. Another point is cannot use dictionary. The ESL learners cannot use dictionary while they are involved in listening task or listening activities, as listening is a spontaneous process. Once an audio is played, it speaks or it pronounces words spontaneously. There is no break, or there is no time, or there is no separate break time where a student can use dictionary for the word that are difficult to them. So as they couldn't use dictionary during the process of listening task, they do not understand the whole content clearly, which ultimately leads the problem to comprehend the content being spoken or content being played. So this is also a factor that makes listening difficult. Then another point is that habituated speech. Mostly the ESL learners or EFL learners are habituated with the speech of their teacher. Teacher use direct method to teach target language, and they use the target language, teacher used the target language in the classroom, and the student became habituated with teacher's speech. They completely understand the teacher's speech, but when they are exposed to other speakers, like a native speaker or other speaker that have different accent from their teacher, ESL student feel difficult to grab the message. Which results the neglection, means the ESL student neglect the speech or they discard when they feel difficult to understand. It means if a learner is facing difficulty to understand, they neglect the speech or they discard listening because they think, I don't understand what the message is being expressed, so why should I pay attention? So psychologically they discard the speech. And that is classroom speech. As an ESL teacher, we sometimes arrange speaking activities, but during the time we cannot control the noise in classroom, and the students far from the speaker cannot listen properly, so they cannot listen the different accent properly even from their classroom, and ultimately they are limited to their teacher's speech. So this is also a factor that affects listening. And once the student who couldn't understand the message being expressed by other speaker rather than their teacher, they neglect or discard the speech or the message being transferred. The next point is that inadequate concentration. So as we discussed that listening is a spontaneous process. Once it is started, as a speaking is a spontaneous process, once a speaker starts speaking, to grab the message, listener have to pay full attention. If there is variation in attention, it will be difficult for the listener to understand the message. So sometimes ESL students pay less or low attention toward the speaking process or during the listening process, which ultimately leads difficulty to understand the message. And that is in most of the ELT classroom we find many passive students. They didn't pay full attention to listen. So to make them active, first of all, that we have to create environment. We have to create environment. It means before teaching listening, we have to develop some warm-up activities. We have to carry some warm-up activities to motivate the students to listen. So if they are motivated, they do not neglect, even they understand a little bit less and they become active, they pay full attention toward the speech So if it is done, the listening activity will be fruitful. If not, the inadequate concentration or less attention toward the speaker, the listening task especially for the ESL learners will not be fruitful. The next point is that curriculum. How curriculum is responsible then to make listening difficult, especially the listening task difficult. Actually, the curriculum boards or education boards, they do not devise the correct weightage for listening activities or listening task or listening skill. Most of the ESL curriculum in the world has divided much weighted to reading, writing, and very less for speaking and listening. Though listening is the first skill that human being learn, and if we have to learn a language properly, only reading and writing cannot make us perfect. The listening of the language is much important to learn vocabulary, to learn how the language is formed, how the language is used. But the curriculum weightage, less curriculum weightage, do not properly motivate the student to develop their listening skill. And there is, even the curriculum board couldn't develop the adequate listening material to develop listening skill of a student. As well as even the teacher's attitude toward teaching listening skill is negative in most of the cases, because teacher thinks that anyhow I have to complete the course, and a student should be passed in the exam, and to pass the exam I have to teach the content that have more weightage or much weightage. So such attitude of teacher even leads to a difficulty to develop listening skill of a student. So these are the factors that generally affect listening in ESL context, and the factors these factors make listening activities difficult, or a student even feel difficult to develop their listening skill because of these factors. So I hope the content will be helpful for you. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.